Hello everyone, I am your narrator, Jack Lowe. In today's footage, I have for you a spectacle, a review into insanity, fear, deception, and curiosity. Our journey begins in the grasslands covered by trees of different varieties. The only company in the grasslands are the local fauna and my own thoughts. Oak and birch line the trees, and shortly beyond the breach is a vast plain. All I could hear for miles was the sounds of my own footsteps and eerie music chiming in the background. First thing was always first. A collection of small tools, and shortly after, a long walk that ends to a lone village. This village is full of people, bees, cows, and enough food to last days. A peaceful escape from the unknown. I'm gonna live here. My goals were very simple. Build a home, a farm, maybe get a dog. Simple life things. And so, I began building. One short trip into the woods to collect all the materials, and then lining up where every wall should be. I always build like this. The next task was building a mine. I needed resources and cobblestone to finish the house. Little did I know this one little task would trigger a cascade of events, and it all started with one little message. Someone was here. A peaceful sanctuary of isolation had been breached, and then came the rain. A downpour would lower my sanity. I had to put the intruder out of my mind. Coal, light, there were things that needed to be done before addressing the issue. But there was no escaping the anxiety this person brought me. Many questions raced through my head. Am I far enough from spawn? How did they get here? Can they see me? And most of all, who are they? Such questions pushed me to build my house, but not just in any image. I wanted it to fit in with the village. If my home looked enough like everything else, maybe the intruder wouldn't find me. Thinking the solution would be fine, I began walking and talking to the villagers until I met someone strange. This villager had a name, or in this case a designation, testificate. I've never heard of it before. The only things I could look up were wording that related it to a witness. A witness of what, I thought? It was too little of an issue for me to think about. Even if this villager posed a potential issue, it was only one person. So, back to collecting. After more drilling, I began to feel uneasy. So I went to check the surface, and then it hit me. Had it been day the whole time? Haven't seen it turn night once. The realization rattled me. Not only was there someone in the server, a villager was named the witness, and now the cycles of day were off. It felt like phenomenon were growing by the minute. So I made a hatch for the mine. That way, whatever's outside can stay outside. The mine got deeper, and eventually I started to hear mobs. However, no matter how hard I dug, no matter in which direction I started to carve the earth out, I couldn't find them. At one point I thought, is it all in my head? Until I heard something really out of the ordinary. A subtle yet terrifying noise echoed in the mine. After everything I'd seen lately, this added a new layer of anxiety. The mine wasn't safe. I climbed the stairs, and after staring down the corridor for what seemed like forever, I closed it off. My rise to the surface didn't bring me any comfort, though, as a testificate started following me around everywhere I went. My mind was still racing with all the strange events, the voices in the cave, everything. I had to have some semblance of control. Anything I could do to maintain the peace of mind. So, before this testificate could do any real damage, I lured him to the mine entrance and trapped him down there. This is where the true spiral began. Everything up until this point could have been in my head. Maybe the intruder was a friend. Maybe I was always below ground at night. Maybe the testificate was just a normal NPC. But almost as if the world itself was pushing back at my attempts to claw some manageable sanity together. It spoke to me. What? Invalid. Up. Oh. Something was here. It wasn't in my head. Whether it was the intruder or the testificate, it wanted me to know it wasn't my imagination. Almost instinctively, I began crafting my home. I needed something to protect me, even if it was just a cobblestone mess. But I didn't have enough resources, so I had to travel further away from my safe haven to the forest nearby. Everything here seemed normal, but every attempt at gathering a bird's eye view defaulted to the distant fog that kept everything just out of view. I collected everything and started working on the roof when I finally noticed it. Just above my head, the sun was blackened, unmoving, stationary, as if time itself had come to an agonizing halt. My first actions were obvious. Protect myself. It's all I could do. So, I finished my home. Shortly after starting to work on the roof, I went to check on our witness. However, he wasn't that anymore. It was just a normal villager, unnamed, unemployed, a regular Joe. The mystery deepened. I couldn't leave him down there, so I let him out, and then ran back to finish the home. Time had passed, and no matter how many times I tried, I couldn't sleep. All I could manage to do with my time was find more ore in the mountain, and collect one single cherry blossom tree that might give me a shred of sanity. I was running out of ideas, though, and at this point, I was just waiting for something else to happen. The only way forward was down. So I went back into the mine, every slow, agonizing step, listening to every movement in the earth, every crack, every rumble, hoping whatever made that noise was no longer here. My hopes were in vain. Whatever was making that noise was still here. Not only here, but it was closer. Needless to say, I retreated for the time being. But as I returned to the surface, I realized something. It was night. Almost as if prompted by my return to the surface, sounds of a music box started chiming in the distance. I ran inside to find some shred of comfort and sleep, but it's not night. It's still day. The chiming stopped. The sun in the sky was far darker now. It was almost impossible to see a few feet in front of me, and worst of all, no matter how much I looked, the village was empty. I went into the woods to see if something had chased them, but I found nothing. So much nothing that there wasn't even a mob around. Speaking of mobs, have I even seen one? The only thing I found were remains. Remains and sounds. The only thing I could do was prove this assertion wrong. I went back into the mines and started digging, and after what felt like hours, I finally found it. The cavern. It knew I found it, but I couldn't leave empty-handed. So I grabbed some iron and then returned back to my small base camp. While burning the iron, I noticed another entrance to the cavern, but again, nothing. Before I could hear mobs, and now it was silent. I returned home to construct my armor. It was still night, or whatever it was. I drank milk to see if that could cure it, but it didn't work. Whatever was happening, it was outside of me. I decided to venture out into the plains looking for mobs, and finally, after crossing the vast wasteland, I found a single zombie. It started to burn under the black sun, which meant it was possible for them to spawn, so why weren't they appearing around the village or in the caves? The intensity of the mystery started to wane on me. It felt like I was going crazy. Every answer brought more and more questions. So I had to start dealing with the problems in a more radical way. The village had to be safe, by any means. It was my sanctuary, my safe haven. So, I found all the testificates that had been appearing in my village, and I killed them. I know it was radical, and even the golem made me think so, but I had to be sure. I had to do something. I went as far out of my way to collect lava in case maybe the golem had turned just like them. My job wasn't done, though. I had to protect the few that were left. I grabbed the bell and lured them into their homes with a false threat of raiders and barricaded them inside. I know what it sounds like, but there was no other choice. My security, their security, it had to be ensured. But there was still one more thing that wasn't safe. The tunnels. So once again, I donned a new case of bravery and descended into the catacombs. Each block broken shot fear into my veins. Every drop made me jump in terror. Every single noise crept into my mind. There it was again. A subtle yet unmistakable growl. It was still here. It's always here. I built a wall, a feeble yet hopeful attempt to grab some degree of safety. Build something between me and whatever this was. It felt like I was being watched, that I had no control over everything around me. I knew my mind was slipping, and I knew I was probably going to start committing more and more atrocities. But maybe, just maybe I could actually do something to help. I could warn someone. I could catalog everything that was happening. Maybe the next person who found this mess would find some comfort knowing, well, they weren't the only one. I made a book and quill and started to jot down everything that had been happening to me. Every little thing I started to notice here. But almost instantly after putting the pages down, I started to hear things. Digging. Mobs right outside my door, this time hoping it was in my head. It was time to up my safety. The only way to protect myself was to craft a golden apple and build a perimeter around my home. Now, even if the noises were real, they won't get me. But before I did that, I went to check on the villagers. I had to make sure my fortifications were working. It felt hopeless. They were all turning against me. None of them were safe. I wasn't safe. A music boxes started playing in the distance. It was louder, and I had to protect myself. Whatever this was, it was getting worse. After building the perimeter, I felt like I needed an extra layer of safety, so I carved out a basement. And I know why in the basement, that there are things in the earth, but you just don't get it. What else could I do? I felt helpless. I felt alone. It was time to go back down. The more I lit up the cave, the more chance that thing would be pushed further and further down. That was a fact. Nothing could change that. More light, less monsters. And then, I found what felt like its home. A giant underground cavern. The only thing you could hear were sounds of water dripping from the ceiling. Lighting this up, it would be a task, but I had to start somewhere. And while doing it, I spotted diamonds. I could feel it. It was a trap. This thing, it knows what everyone wants. I stood just beyond the entrance, staring into the darkness, and I folded. No matter what, if I could get my hands on them, if I could craft some armor or a weapon. But no matter how much I told myself this, I couldn't stop trembling. My hands were shaking, my mind freaking out at every sound, but I just needed to get a little closer. I got them. Somehow I got them. It felt like a victory. It felt like something finally good was happening, and I could return home. And then, it was daytime. This eternal night had finally ended. Things were going right for once. So I took advantage of it. I headed off into the forest. Maybe I could get away. With the light, maybe I could find something new, something far beyond this place. Maybe I would be okay. I started climbing the top of a mountain just beyond the forest, and took my first few steps into freedom. There was no escape. There was never escape. There was only home. I ran and I ran, mobs appearing out of thin air, shadows in the dark. I just wanted to sleep. When I woke up, it was still dark. Everything was a lie. I couldn't take it anymore. How could anyone live like this? How could I live like this? They chased me back. No, they pulled me back. There was no more illusion of safety. There was never any safety. All the mobs, the disappearances, the phenomenons, it all came back to whatever was below me, whatever was in those caves. And so, the only course of action left was to chase it out. I ran down the mine, sword in hand, plenty of torches to boot. It was a simple idea. No more darkness, no more monsters. I began lighting the cave. It was my only option. Or so I thought. was there. It was always there. Slowly but surely pulling me deeper and deeper into the caves, keeping me close to town, giving me the illusion of safety. It was feeding off of every fear, every anxious thought. And now, it's got me. Thank you so much for watching. A special thanks to the author of the original version of the Modpack. And if you want more to this story, or even want to try it out for yourself, let me know in the comments and check the description. And remember, always have a torch lit. Good night.